Jess said, I'm Polly Rowe. I'm the literary manager at Sydney Theatre Company, and I'm here to represent the artistic team at the company. Literary managers are primarily concerned with writers, hence the script, but we also work very closely with other artists. So I work with designers and actors and directors, and every now and again, crazy artists like puppeteers. Today I've been asked to talk about the relationship between the company's greening strategies and the art that we produce. My slides. Oh, that's an audience enjoying itself. You'll know why greening is important, and I think it's widely accepted now that sustainability is necessary for our future. I don't want to talk to you today about why we're greening the wharf. I'm sure that's very sort of self-explanatory to you. But today I want to address this idea of the power of zero that Jess has talked about, and how the challenges of changing the way that we live might actually provoke and inspire and have a positive impact on STC's core business, which is, of course, making art. That's our audience. Next slide. Greening the Wharf. Greening the Wharf, this is the title of our greening programme, which is an initiative of our artistic directors, Kate Blanchett and Andrew Upton. The project is a commitment to making our home, the wharf, as green as possible, and it's spearheaded by two hero projects. We've installed, as you can see here, PV solar panels on the roof of the wharf, and underneath the wharf we've installed or are installing a rainwater harvesting system. It's a project that we hope will inspire arts patrons and organisations and the wider community. And I'll just go to the next slide. Greening as theatre. Our approach to greening the wharf has been very theatrical. It's like a show. We've treated it like a show. It has a leading lady, who we all know is not me. She's blonder. And we have a huge publicity campaign that she's led. We see the wharf as something of a stage. It's lit up by these huge PV solar panels, and it's soon to be adorned with booths that are interactive and promote the green message to audiences and school parties who are visiting. I would go so far to say that the project is a piece of theatre in and of itself. Theatre, by its very nature, is imaginative. It's born of the imaginations of artists and audience. It's a space for us to examine the way things are and imagine how they might be. How does the world look? How might it look? STC's Greening the Wharf project is about imagining what a green world might look like. We have imagined what a green theatre company looks like, and we are presenting it to an audience and asking them to imagine a greener future. Our art form is concerned with stimulating debate. We create work that responds to the issues of our time, that wrestles with difficult, new or controversial ideas. The Greening the Wharf project is also intended to do that. We're inviting an audience, beyond those who are visiting the wharf to see our shows, to view, to imagine, to think and discuss. And we hope that as a result of that, they might too act. Greening our creative process. At STC, we aim to approach all of our creative endeavours intrepidly and with wild ambition. It's a modus operandi that extends to our greening project. Over the past year, we have modified our building and our habits and behaviours to reduce our environmental impact. Greening our creative process has also been a huge part of our vision. In that sacred place, the rehearsal room, we're working to save energy. We're doing those small things that Rob talked about, like introducing timed lighting and aircon timing. We've cut back on paper usage by farewelling single-sided scripts, and scripts are treasured documents, so that's a huge cultural shift to think about possibly using a script that has both sides printed on it. Our stage managers now circulate reports and schedules electronically to save on printing. Our rehearsal process usually requires a rehearsal set and perishable props. So where possible, we use recycled materials and props from stock, which extends the lifespan of the newly created items. All the artists that work at the company, it's the lighting, costume and set designers that have been most affected by the Greening the Wharf project. Our green design policy asks that creatives consider green initiatives in the development of any designs for SDC, and that they attempt to minimise their impact on the environment. The designers that we work closely with our production department to source responsibly. We have asked that they think about responsible sourcing in every decision that they make. So, for example, our set designers and carpenters have changed the type of timber that they use to build sets. They've ditched this commonly used Luan ply, which is a cheap, easy-to-use product, which unfortunately comes from the tropical old-growth rainforests. And now they source birch ply, which usually has certification from the Forest Stewardship Council. For designs that need a hardwood look, our carpenters dip into a stockpile of second-hand aged timber. In order to reduce wastage, our designers try to imagine the life that a set or costume or prop might have beyond its initial use. When designing the set for our production of The Mysteries, designer Alice Babbage and director Tom Wright conceived a set that could be used again and again. Instead of building a set to fill a stage, they gutted the space, removed the seating banks, and built a mezzanine level from which the actors could be viewed. It's a brilliant design, and it was perfect for the show, but it also gifted the Wharftooth Theatre with a brand new configuration, which we now affectionately refer to as the Babs. And that's it, actually. There's Richard Pyros and the resident actors in that set, and you can see that the audience just stood around in the space, so it's a pit. Theatre is a form that constantly reuses. So, for instance, we reuse classic plays, change them slightly, recontextualise them, and breathe new life into them. Reusing objects and ideas is really inspiring. We can take something that was already interesting and use it in a new, more relevant way. Our greening policy asks designers to reuse wherever possible, and we're increasingly seeing them incorporating stock items and materials into their designs. We've seen some genuinely brilliant creations rise from the ashes of items that have long festered in our stores. Costume designers Anna Blunkett, Luke Sales and Renee Mulder recently raided the STC wardrobe to scavenge for old costumes that could be broken up, restyled, and worn by the actors performing in Edward Gant's Amazing Feats of Loneliness, and that's an image of a couple of the costumes there. The costumes contain fabrics and, well, as you can see, fabrics and looks from different periods and places, so it's a really eclectic, cobbled together sort of aesthetic, but it signifies the theatrical world that the director had conceived, which sort of exists outside time and place, so it's quite mythic. So they're green, and those parameters that have been sort of applied to their designers have created costumes that are really imaginative and kind of really consistent with the director's vision. These changes that I've mentioned are just a few of the few examples of the changes that we're making at the Wharf. But I really want to talk about the benefits of all this change, and I think that the environmental benefits are pretty obvious, and we've heard a lot about those this morning. But I'd like to just talk a bit about the artistic benefits. There are benefits to our business, of course, and we're saving money on reduced power and water usage. And I hope that that's money that we might actually invest in writers or other artists in new work very soon. I can see a writer over there, and hopefully we'll be investing in that direction soon. And then, of course, there are reputational and brand benefits. Our building has itself become a stage. It's a showcase of Australian innovation. The benefits of our greening project also extend to our colleagues in other theatre companies, and in order to ensure that materials are reused, we often gift them to other companies. So the grass that was used on the sets of Wonderful World of Dysplasia is currently touring Australia in an independent production of Midsummer Night's Dream. So to some extent, our greening effort cross-subsidise that production. And there are the less direct artistic benefits that I think are really important. And I've sort of observed that parameters often stimulate rather than restrict creative thinking. And setting limits, I believe, really forces artists to focus on what's essential and often results in more clearly expressed ideas. I met an artist yesterday called Tim Watts, and the two of us were espousing the virtues of simple design in theatre. And he referenced a designer called Jean-Guy Lacan, who says that theatre design is simply about facilitating the relationship between the actor and the audience. Anything fussy just gets in the way of that. And that's not to say that all good theatre has to take place on a bare stage, but it does mean that everything on stage has to be essential. And I think that's entirely in line with our green design policy. So I'm basically saying that there are some real opportunities for artists that are born of the parameters that our green policy has put on them, and I think that it's stimulating creativity perhaps rather than impeding it. But I'd better stop talking because I think I've taken more than my 7 minutes. And I'd like to introduce our head of lighting, Graham Henstock, and I'll leave the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. I'm very aware of the time, so I'll try to get through things quite quickly. As Polly's already sort of introduced for you the basic greening of the wharf idea, the big hero projects being the 1906 solar panels on our roof that are producing about 70% of the power that we require on the wharf as part of our theatre company. And also sort of 500 metres of piping that's going underneath the wharf as rainwater harvesting. They were the very obvious things, although they were the big sort of big ticket items for our greening. But across the company, it was a much more holistic sort of idea. We wanted to hit every area. So when Kate and Andrew came to me and said we want to have a look at our lighting systems, I'll be honest and say I got a little nervous because lighting's a fairly conspicuous user of power when it comes to theatre. These lights that you can even up here around at the moment. Each one of them uses about 10 times the amount of power that your household globe uses. So when we're doing shows, and sometimes we have 300 of those or 400 of those up, immediately we're aware that we're using a lot more power than your household. So yeah, it's quite an obvious use of power. So we wanted to do something about that, and we wanted to have a look and see what we can do. And we wanted to try to find a balance between the fact that we obviously believe that theatre has a cultural and artistic and a social value, but how do you balance that out against an environmental value? And we wanted to see what we could do to reduce our sort of carbon footprint. So, to go quickly through what we did, I was tasked with looking into what options were out there and sort of have a look through things. And I spent about 18 months looking at all different sorts of technologies, cutting-edge technologies, existing technologies, trying to find ways that we could reduce our power usage. Now, up here it says myths, but that's probably a little bit sort of deceptive. I actually probably should say that I went into the process with some certain sort of preconceptions, with some sort of basic ideas. And initially, when I went into it, I assumed a few things that that LEDs were probably going to be the only way forward for us, and that the incandescent light globe was evil, mostly because, I'd seen the whole process of phasing out incandescent globes when it came to domestic things. And I'd sort of also assumed that manufacturers, given that we're quite a niche market, that we're quite a niche industry, probably weren't going to be particularly interested in the sort of things that we had to say and the things that we needed from lights. And I was really sort of prepared for quite a difficult process of trying to find technologies that would work for us in a theatrical space and still give us the control that we needed from lighting, but use less energy and find ways to do things. What I discovered along the way was that some of my preconceptions were a bit sort of in error. Obviously, LEDs as a light source are something that are coming around nowadays. Everybody's seeing them around at their homes and seeing compact fluorescence. When it came to theatrical lights, we found that it wasn't actually necessary to go all the way to LEDs and things like that. We found that just simply by replacing our 20-year-old theatre lights with the newer models, which were still incandescent globes, that we more than tripled our energy efficiency. And what that's got to do with, it's got to do with the fact that with a theatre light, you're dealing with 100 years of optical technology. You're dealing with lenses that are designed to take a single point source of light and fashion them onto stage in some sort of controlled manner. that technology has been developing for a very long time. LEDs and things are getting there, fluorescents are getting there in ways that we can control them, but even just the simple act of, which was a cheaper option, admittedly for us, but taking that step of just upgrading the equipment that we had gave us an enormous energy saving straight away. So even for theatre companies that don't have the resources that we have, it's something that they can think about, that they don't necessarily have to jump all the way straight away. They can ride that wave that we were talking about before, and as the technology develops, incorporate it into their processes. I did, however, find out that also that there are some LED products out there that are very good, and that there were some things really worth looking at. I guess as a bit of an eye-opener for me is I found that I had to really cut through a bit of greenwashing that went on from some manufacturers. There was lights that I got that they would say to me, this thing's using 150 watts of LEDs. And I think that's fantastic. Our normal theatre light is 1,000 watts. And then I'd sort of actually put some power tests, because we did a lot of testing on things across it, and find out, yes, there was 150 watts of LEDs, but there was also another 200 watts of fans there to cool the LEDs, another 300 watts of electronics there sort of to allow us to control the LEDs, and a few things like that. So we learnt that you have to be fairly discerning about the technologies you adopt, and you have to really have a look at them yourself and go into them a bit to sort of see what's out there and see what's appropriate for you. This also then resulted in me sort of speaking a lot to manufacturers and sort of saying to them, well, this is what we want. We want to reduce our power usage. And I was quite surprised. I was expecting that they would be very sort of profit-driven. And I actually found that a lot of the manufacturers I was talking to, even though we're a niche industry, were quite interested in what we had to say, and also had a real sort of desire for themselves to make their components or their lights as environmentally friendly as they could, but also in a way that they could service us. Which is why we decided to get involved in the process. We identified a few things through Philips Electrical and a few other sort of major electrical manufacturers who were producing lights, and we said to them, we like what you're doing, but we need it to do this and we need it to do that. And for our theatres, we need, it sounds like a simple thing, but everyone who's been to a theatre show has seen a lovely little fade to a blackout at the end. And we found that there were some of the LED technologies would fade to about 10% and then snap out. So we found that by actually feeding this stuff back to manufacturers, a lot of manufacturers were actually really receptive and would start to develop new technologies based on what we were asking them to do. This for us was a real bit of another big eye-opener. We discovered that we could influence the process, we could influence the way these technologies are being developed to allow them to work for us, but also get the environmental impacts that we wanted, and to those sort of, allow us to make the savings that we were looking for. We also discovered that it wasn't as simple as just changing the source of light and reducing the power, that we found that we had to be a little bit more holistic in the way that we thought about how we use lights. This started to mean involving lighting designers in the process, asking them the question, can you do that with less lights? Also looking at the way the products that we were buying might be a low energy thing, but can the materials from the light itself be recycled at the end of its life? And we started to find that there were some manufacturers out there that were going as far as making all of their theatre lights out of 100% recycled materials, and were also giving everything a stamp, so at the end of life the entire product could be broken down and entirely recycled. We also found that, being scared of the incandescent globe, that the incandescent globe as an actual item is fairly recyclable. It's glass, it's metal, that's kind of all that's in there. What the nasty part about the incandescent globe was for us was our power usage and the power that was being used. While ever it was going back and being powered but the far end by a coal power station, it was a very dirty source of power. If it's being attached to our solar panels and we're finding ways to green the power that we're using to power those incandescent globes, the incandescent globe isn't suddenly the evil beast that we previously had. So we found ways that, for companies that aren't necessarily as big as us, if they can find ways to purchase more green power and do things like that, they're actually sort of offsetting the use of the fact that they're using those incandescent globes. So we decided that the final thing we need to do is we needed to be inclusive. It wasn't something that we could just take on ourselves. We thought we needed to include manufacturers in the process. We need to include designers and creatives in the process. We need to get them involved at all levels of it. And we found that was where things worked best for us, is that once everybody knew what the the aim or the goal of the company, where we wanted to go was that everybody started coming up with different ideas. It wouldn't just be something that I was driving or that Kate and Andrew were driving. It became something that the whole company would say, oh, wait a minute, I've got an idea of how we could do this better, and something else we could use. Also found that by being, once you start to get out there and involve yourself in that community, people feed ideas back to you, but also manufacturers start coming to you and going, well, look, we've developed this before because this is what we think we need. But someone else has had an idea and we didn't think that would be something that you'd want. Would that be something that you want? And then suddenly we'd say to them, yeah, okay, give us one of those, let's have a look at that. And suddenly we found that all sorts of things were coming out of the woodwork of different sort of technologies and ideas for ways that even the existing technology could be adapted. The final thing, and this is something that obviously Kate and Andrew are very sort of big on, and it's something that we've also taken on in the across the company as a whole, is that we believe that as an organisation you need to be able to advocate what you believe and what you practice. We don't pretend that we've got the lighting side of things completely perfect yet. It's an ongoing process that over the next 10 years we'll be developing, as new technologies develop, we'll be taking more things on, we'll be trying new ideas. But what we can do is we can tell people like yourselves, we can tell our colleagues in other theatre companies, we can tell theatre companies around the world, other arts practitioners, this is what we found, this is what sort of thing that we're doing and how we're finding ways to reduce our power usage, and hopefully we can stimulate them to do the same sort of things. We found that if you actually provide people with the tools and the means to reduce their power usage or to be environmentally responsible, if you provide designers who normally wouldn't have included that as part of their brief, they would just be concerned about their budget and their timelines and the look of the show, but if you can sort of then get them to think about the environmental things as well, they will then start to feed back into the process, and actually everybody has a cultural shift that is very sort of beneficial for the entire company and for the world at the end of the day. So at the end of the process, we've started where we're up to, and we've bought some new lights, we've done things, but we're seeing it very much as a work in progress. And like all good things, it will continue on. And I guess what I'd say to anybody else who's working in the arts is that you don't necessarily need to don't be daunted by all of the technologies out there. Don't be overwhelmed by all of the options. Just make the steps that you can and sort of go with those small steps at a time, and then you'll find that every step after that gets a little bit easier. And for us, it's always about sort of keeping that momentum going forward, finding new ways, exploring new options, being at the front of those sort of developments, and seeing how we can incorporate them into our work.